Ma'am.
All right. Okay, great. All right, here we go. Why care about engagement in AA? Alcoholics Anonymous is the most widely used source of help for alcoholism, alcohol problems, and drug problems too, for that matter. And over time, MAAEZ and other research has shown that those who attend AA have higher rates of abstinence than those who drop out. However, and here's the reason for MAAEZ. Dropout from AA is very high. Over half the people drop out within their first year. When I first started observing AA meetings, I heard people say that if you look to the left and right of you and count yourself in, 2 of you will not be here a year later. Only 1 of you will be. So this idea of 12-step facilitation, which making AA easier is, the idea comes from the success of a huge, humongous study funded internally by the National Institutes of Health called Project Match. And they wanted to study cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational interviewing, and they needed a kind of control condition. So they developed this thing called 12-step facilitation, which they were pretty sure wasn't going to be effective. And it was they had a manual, and for the most part, PhD level therapists delivered these sessions, and the goals were to teach people about AA's steps, to accept that you're an alcoholic and to surrender to a higher power. What they found in that study was higher rates of abstinence for what they thought was the control condition, what they thought was the placebo. So I dug into that because I had been told by the head of NIAAA, the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, not to study AA. And I had overheard another executive from the Institute say that it was medical malpractice to refer people to AA. So I thought, well, I don't know, look at these results. So I wanted to build on the 12-step facilitation idea, but make it fit better into today's treatment system, which is group format, as you know, and which has a lot of recovering counselors as therapists. And I felt that I didn't think that the intervention should really try to do what AA does, teach people about surrendering and all that. I mean, leave that to AA. And I wanted to focus on what we knew was a major mechanism of action for the effectiveness of AA, which was the people. And one reason people get turned off by AA, I had learned from observing and talking to people new in recovery, trying to get a hold of AA, was that they didn't dig the culture. They thought it was weird. Against that backdrop, you have treatment programs wanting to have psychologists and doctors and social workers teach people about AA. And I thought, well, who better to teach people about AA than people who have the experiential knowledge themselves of what it's like to go to a meeting, sit in a meeting, be a stranger, and end up 10 years later, a year later, feeling like you're a member. So I wanted to develop an intervention where the counselor would be the one who's the active ingredient in the intervention. The manual is available on the SHARE website. You can have it for free. It prepares people for what they're going to hit in terms of the culture and people of AA, and a tiny bit about the program. So you could ask yourself, well, why do you need a 12-step based program? Intervention. If you're a 12-step based program, why do you need a manual? You already know how to do it. Point taken. I'm going to look at my notes to see what I want to say on this point. When I asked programs how they introduce people to AA, they didn't really know. They sort of told me that they let the counselors do their thing. And the resistance that I heard clients talk about was being uncomfortable things like the language, felt like a clique, and the God thing. So I worked on addressing those issues. Now in California, we have the California social model programs that are practically like the MAAEZ intervention in living color, where they have AA members on site leading groups, staff are in recovery, alumni are there all the time. So maybe they don't need the program. Maybe they don't need MAAEZ. And that's something we can talk about as you hear the what the content of the sessions are in the chat room and then in our breakout room at the end. Scientists, mainly psychologists, have developed other ways of facilitating AA since the Project Match one. And one of the things they came up with was intense referral. Well, they would go to AA meetings and get lists of people at the program who were willing to help the therapist introduce the person to AA. And they found higher abstinence at 6 months and at 12 months. And we keep seeing a theme of about 10% more are abstinent. The thing about that is that it asks a lot of the people in AA to keep these mailing lists and phone lists up to date. I felt that the patient or the client needed to be the one to reach out to AA members rather than the therapist. So the goal of MAAEZ is to prepare clients to engage in the culture, make it easier to connect with the members, because social networks is a mechanism of change. And there's several studies shown at the bottom there, sort of proving that that's the reality. And the second goal is to help clients fill a purposeful role early on. There's this thing called the helper therapy principle, which to my way of thinking is what AA is really based on. And the idea is that it doesn't really matter a whole lot if the person being helped is helped. What matters is the helper. There's therapy in helping. And I wanted people early in recovery to experience that magical therapy themselves. The structure of MAAEZ, there are 6 sessions run by people in recovery who have an active 12-step program in process. The sessions are 90 minutes each. There's an outline with a little cartoon character next to the parts of the session where you can open it up for discussion. It provides time guidelines for each point in the session. Each session starts with 15 to 20-minute check-in, includes mainly the clients talking about what it was like to do the homework the week before. And that's where it all really starts happening. Not did you do it, but how did it feel to do it? There's a break, there's a summary, and then a homework assignment. Sessions are usually a week apart so people can do the homework. The intro session, so there's 6 sessions. The intro is the first session you go to and the last session that you go to. You go to the last session as an alumni to help the counselor lead that intro session and talk about your own experience with MAAEZ and with AA. There's 4 core sessions: spirituality, sponsorship, principles, not personalities, and living sober. And they can be attended in any order. So programs cycle through the 4 sessions over a 4-week period, while at the same time always running an intro session for the newcomers coming into the treatment program. And put in the chat room if you're not following this or confused by that. The introductory session is where the graduates come back and talk about their experience. And we talk about why go to AA, and were you going to AA when you relapsed? How do you pick a meeting? They go through the meeting directory and actual practice picking out meetings. We talk about the rules of the road at the meetings and why they have them. And then the homework is to pick a meeting you've never gone to and go to it and report back the following week. The spirituality session talks about why is spirituality necessary for recovery and to make it accessible to non-religious folks. And let's face it, this is one of the big objections one hears to 12-step programs. It's a religion. So we begin by acknowledging that spirituality isn't always part of recovery, for example, with SOS or with Women for Sobriety, but that it is part of AA because 12-step programs believe willpower isn't enough. We then ask the clients, when has willpower been enough for you? 15 minutes are spent on how AA is not a religious program. We define religion from Webster's dictionary, that it is a set of beliefs about the nature of the universe, how AA has no such beliefs about the nature of the universe, just that you need to believe in a power greater than yourself, which can be the group, God, or good orderly direction. We talk about the importance of being clear that you are not God. And that's really all you need to take away from the spirituality session, is that you're not God. You don't control everything. We talk about the HOW and how spirituality in AA is not about philosophical belief system. It's about your behavior. It's about taking responsibility for your actions, accepting life on life's terms, getting outside yourself, connecting with the universe, doing service, etc. MAAEZ clients have told us that the spirituality session really helped. Homework is to talk to someone at a meeting who you don't know, who has more sobriety than you, remembering that the following week you're going to have to report back on how that felt. The Principles Not Personality session talks about the common objections to AA. For example, that it's a cult. We explain that cults try to make people believe certain things, and that while it's true that AA culture does discourage challenging program content, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking or using. And that's stated at the very beginning of every single meeting. The only rigid rule is abstinence. We do talk about how AA does have its own culture and language and ritual, and it can kind of feel like a cult. It also kind of feels like a clique at first because you don't know anybody, but that happens pretty much in any group that you go into. And we explained that it's really true that people in AA want to help because they believe by helping other people, they help themselves. We talk about the disease concept in AA and that people are not responsible for it. And they don't even have to buy into the disease concept if they don't feel like it. We explained that leadership in AA rotates. There is no real leader. We talk about why 90 meetings in 90 days. And the homework is to ask someone you don't know at a meeting for their phone number. So we're upping the ante a little bit here. Don't just talk to someone you don't know. Get their phone number and call them. Not just get the number, call them. The sponsorship section is maybe the most important from a scientifically supported point of view, because sponsor is a huge mechanism of action for people's abstinence when they get involved in AA. It's usually the favorite session because they get to play act. Each person gets a vignette. There are 4 different vignettes, and you practice during the session how to ask someone to be your temporary sponsor. In the first vignette, one client plays the person being asked, and the other person plays the person asking, and they're pretending that you're asking somebody you went to coffee with to be your sponsor, your temporary sponsor. Another is to ask someone whose phone number you got, ask them, and practice waiting in line for the person to be free to talk to. Practice the person who's being asked to say, well, I'm pretty busy, and getting around those objections gracefully. All of that is play acted during the role modeling of the sponsorship section. And this is by the people, not by the counselor. The counselor is just helping facilitate it. And what happens usually in asking for a temporary sponsor is that you hear something from somebody at a meeting, you connect with it, and they say, no, they're too busy, and role modeling how to get over that. No surprise that the homework for the sponsorship session is asking someone to be your temporary sponsor. And I think the most difficult session to deliver is the living sober session, because that's really where the rubber hits the road. What are things that you can do to live a happy life without your best friend, or what used to be your best friend, drinking and using? The bottom line of the session is to open the client's idea that people in AA can become people that can help them avoid relapsing, and also become people that they can have fun with. We talk about HALT, ask, did it ever happen to you? Then we move on to asking about the advice you've heard about staying away from slippery places and people. We talk a lot in that session about how people in AA can be part of this solution. We're careful to say that there is no need, in terms of the research, no need to dump friends who are still using, although it's good if you eventually do a little bit of that, but that it's hard. And in the meanwhile, just add in some recovering people to your social network. This leads to a discussion about what steps they can take to feel they're a part of AA. And the outline has steps that the counselor can introduce if they kind of get bogged down with ideas, how many baseball games can you go to as a group and have that be therapeutic kind of thing. We talk about, is there life after recovery? Can you have sex? How can you dance? My gosh, can you do that when you're not stoned? Finally, we ask them to share what things they're worried about doing without the help of alcohol and drugs. And those two things I just mentioned come up, believe me. For homework, again, no surprise, we ask them to do something with one or more people from AA who have more sobriety than they do. So that's the sessions. Now, is it effective? We conducted the clinical trial in 2 treatment programs, one in Resi and one in outpatient. We got the same results as matched, 10% higher rate of alcohol abstinence, drug abstinence, and total abstinence from those receiving MAAEZ. We found a dose response effect, meaning the more sessions you attended, the higher your abstinence rate. We looked at whether it was more effective for particular groups of people, maybe for atheists, for example, people who maybe have high psychiatric severity, maybe it wouldn't work for them. We looked at that. Well, it really seemed to matter the most, weirdly enough. This is so weird. For people that had prior treatment and already had gone to AA, people who'd gone to a ton of AA meetings in their lifetime, yet here they were back at treatment. People with high ASI psych severity did better. It really mattered for them. Atheists, no surprise there. And people with no heavy drinkers or drug users in their social network. In other words, they learned that it wasn't just not having heavy drinkers in their social network, but they had to have some people in recovery in their social network. It's crucial. There's papers about this in journals if you want to read them. We know why it's effective. Now, why is it effective? So here comes some science. Oh my gosh, a drawing. A mechanism of action. You want to know, we know that attending MAAEZ gives you a higher rate of abstinence, but why? That's a mechanism of action. Well, MAAEZ focuses on spirituality, speaking about service. Service is a form of spirituality. So we look at doing service as a possible mediator. Comfort in the fellowship, meeting attendance as part of principles, not personality session. Having a sponsor, we look at whether that could be a reason. Having sober friends, reading literature, doing steps, having a spiritual awakening. These could all be mechanisms. We looked at all of those statistically. And what did we find? We looked at the sample overall among people in the study who had higher attendance to 12-step before and people with high psych severity. And we see that being a sponsor was a mechanism at 6 months. It wasn't at 12 months. Doing service was a mechanism at 6 and 12. I think I might be giving this wrong. No, what this is showing, oh my gosh, this is showing whether MAAEZ caused these things. Does going to MAAEZ help you get a sponsor? It did in the high AA group. So if you went to a lot of AA before you came to MAAEZ, you're new to treatment now, you're hit with MAAEZ, and at 6 months, we find that people in that group had higher rates of having a sponsor. Service was caused by MAAEZ at 6 and 12 months, and among the high AA group at 12 months. Comfort speaking, something so simple as feeling comfortable speaking, was a mechanism of action that was caused by MAAEZ. And having support in your social network also. And this shows the groups where it is and is not a mechanism of action. Now, my slides are not advancing. This is not good. Oh, there we go. Does it affect outcomes? Okay, this is the part where it's the last arrow. Does that mechanism affect the outcome? And look at these dots all over the place. This is why MAAEZ works. Helps you get a sponsor even if you've been to AA for 1,000 years. and relaxed, even if you have high psych severity. It helps you get a sponsor. That's why it works. Doing service, feeling comfortable speaking at a meeting, feeling comfortable being at a meeting. How weird is that? But does that make sense? Yes. You're going to keep coming back if you feel comfortable, and having support for sobriety. AA activities, especially service, explain the effect. Having support for sobriety is especially important for those with high prior AA and those with high psych severity. Neither increased meeting attendance nor overall AA activity, like doing the steps, appeared to explain MAAEZ effects. And that's because it's AA that's causing those things to happen, not those 6 sessions of MAAEZ. Results suggest that MAAEZ works by connecting people with other members, and more details about that are in these papers. So we're going to do breakout groups. I think we're okay with time. Let me look at my clock. We're vaguely okay with time. You can apply this in your practice, and I want you to think about this in breakout groups. Some advantages you might consider thinking about in your breakout groups is that your program is going to know that certain 12-step content is being given to clients. And one thing that some of you may or may not like is that if you really follow the MAAEZ guidelines, you will limit the time that the counselors spend in a given hour or hour and a half session on their personal experience. I have sat in dozens, if not hundreds, of treatment sessions where really well-meaning counselors spend the whole time talking about their own experience, which is great if their experience vibes with what the people are in the room have had. But if it doesn't, it's like, oh, more of the same. We have to keep listening to this. So it's limited to a certain amount of time at certain points in the intervention. And all of this was designed based on doing the intervention, observing it, talking to the clients afterwards about how it felt, talking to the counselors delivering it about how it felt, and then refining the manual constantly before we did the clinical trial. Even if you don't want to implement MAAEZ, look at the homework assignments in the manual. The manual is available on the website as well. And consider routinely offering the intro session so that people with longer term recovery in your program can experience the role of helping and can help the counselor, who's often overcome with objections to 12-step programs, help them so that they're not the Lone Ranger having to put some positive mojo into introducing clients to AA. Here's an example of things that you can say to patients, and all of this is in the manual. Why should I go to AA? I'm an atheist. Will AA work for me? Yes, same success rate. And we have studies in the manual that back up these points. I don't like the God part. Just remember, you're not God. What is spirituality in AA? Getting outside yourself, helping other beings makes you feel better. AA is a cult. Kind of feels like a cult, but it's really just a culture, the first 4 words of the word cult. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Try different meetings, and that's super important. And in the MAAEZ intervention, they have 6 times to try different meetings. They feel like I don't fit in. This is super important to hear. As a counselor in recovery, 10, 15, 20 years, you might have forgotten just how hard it is to feel like you fit in. Encourage people to help set up chairs or clean up after, to raise their hand as a newcomer, to talk to someone in the program about how they're doing. Talk about it feeling like a clique. Yes, it can feel like that. But remember that members want to help newcomers. And I think I'm getting repetitive, so I think now maybe we'll go into the MAAEZ breakout sessions. Lenny, can we do that now?
Yes, ma'am. So I would suggest that we do 3 or 4 rooms. We have 33 participants. So that would put 10 or 7-ish. I'm not good at math, but what do you prefer, 3 or 4? Breakout room.
4 is fine.
Okay, I'm randomly assigning you to breakout rooms. And I will give you a countdown. Lee, how long would you like the breakout rooms to last?
How long do we go? How much time do we have for this session in total
In
left?
total, we have 30 minutes left.
Then how about 15 or so?
Okay, that sounds good. I'll give you guys a 1 or 2 minute warning when you have 15
Okay.
minutes
And
left.
then we're going to want to have each group send us a chat, and if they can talk out loud instead about how it went. I don't know if that's possible, Lenny.
Oh, to do like a debrief, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we'll do is after, when you come back from the breakout rooms, you will be assigned a number, room 1, 2, 3, or 4. Take note of what room you're in, and then we'll go through and invite people from room 1, 2, 3, and 4 to tell us about their experience in the breakout room.
Okay.
All right. So here you go. You're headed to the breakout rooms. You just join. So some people haven't joined. They may have walked away from their computers, but you are invited to join the breakout room. If you're having trouble, you can certainly send me a private chat. You can put it in the chat to everyone, and I can help direct you to the breakout room. You also don't have to go if you don't wish to, and do something else for these 15 minutes, or you can ask Dr. Kaskutas some questions, I guess. Most people have gone to the breakout rooms. So it looks like it's going well.
Great.
Okay, so I'll keep an eye on the clock, and I will send everyone a message when we've got a couple minutes left.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to step off for a minute. Do you need anything from me?
I wonder if I can talk to Tony. Is Tony there?
Tony jumped into a breakout room, I think.
Oh, wonderful. That's fabulous.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's in room 3. You can probably join room 3 if you want.
How do I do that?
You're in room 3. It's here, I can move you there. Oh, no, do you have an invitation on your screen?
I can get it. Should I close out my slides? I should, right?
Yeah, you'll probably see it if you do that, or just stop sharing. If you just stop sharing, then it'll come up. So at the top, just sort of stop sharing. There you go. So do you see the invitation to the breakout room?
I see you.
You see me. It says, I can move you to room 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, or 4, but you were already invited to room 3. So I don't know if I can move you there and then move you out, I guess.
Put me there. How do I get in there?
I don't know. Let me try. Right now I'm going to move you to room 4, and then I'll try to move you into room 3 from room 4. See if that works. So join room 4. Yeah.
I would like to go to my man, Mike Pillow.
Hello, Dr. Pillow. Ooh, your signal's breaking up. I'm going to suggest that you turn your video off. That may help strengthen your signal. Can you hear me, Dr. Pillow? You're breaking up a little bit. Are you having trouble?
Hear me?
Can you hear me? Would you like me to put you into a breakout room? Your signal is pretty weak. If you turn
Yeah, I
off,
have a lot of trouble. So I'm learning all this new.
sure. If you can turn your video off. Oh, he left. Okay, anyone who's still here, I'm going to step away for a minute. So, but I'll be back momentarily. Dr. Pellu? Dr. Pellu, can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you now.
Would you like me to move you into a breakout room?
Yes.
Okay, I will do that. I'm going to send you to room 4, okay?
Room 4. Okay.
Yeah, just 1 second here. Let me see where you are. Okay, there you go. Just say accept. So on your screen, it's a,
Accept.
yep, there you go.
Okay, so join room 4.
Yeah, just click that and it should take you there. Wonder why you're not going there. There you go. Welcome back, everyone. I'm just letting everyone populate again. We've got about a third of you back. Hi, Mia.
Yeah.
Okay, so almost everybody is back. So I'd like to invite participants who were in the first breakout room to go ahead and unmute themselves and tell us about your discussion.
Sue, you go ahead. You were the first group.
Oh, was I in the first group?
You're
Yeah.
with me. Yep.
You go ahead. You did most of the talking and we did the listening. So you go
You
ahead.
did
And
not.
everyone
I
will get
did
about
not.
3 minutes. Everyone will get about 3 minutes for the group.
You stop laughing, Thomasino. Brittany, where are you, Brittany?
We had a great discussion kind of about, I mean, everything under the sun, but with MAAEZ, we were talking about kind of the different pathways to, in recovery and harm reduction and peer support and just seeing how, meeting people where they're at and how MAAEZ could be beneficial in that. And I personally had never heard of it before. So this was a great session to understand more about it and where it could be useful in our programming and in our community.
Great.
Fantastic. Any other comments from group 1? Okay, group 2, tell us about your group experience.
Hi, we had a really good talk. We talked about, a lot of people in that group had lived experience in 12-step programs. So it was interesting to hear their perspectives on like what was scary and what was not. And sorry, my phone. Someone had a really good point that like so much of what people experiencing addiction or people in general want is to be accepted, and giving people the tools to feel accepted in like the rooms of AA is really powerful. And I feel like we talked a lot and we learned a lot, I think. So thank you.
I was in group 2 and there were, I think, 3 people who really didn't know of 12 steps. So they were quieter and we tried to solicit their opinion of what they were hearing, and they mostly found it interesting. So the group was like half of people in 12 steps and half that really didn't know anything about 12-step groups. So it was interesting.
Writing this. That must have been interesting to hear that perspective. I mean, so many of us have spent years in them, so it's like, the water we swim in.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else from group 2? We can also move on to group 3.
I think I was in group 3. I'm not for sure. I can't remember. I don't, but we talked about, there was one interesting thing that we talked about was people who don't have lived experience, could they still benefit from being a counselor in this field? And for one, I don't have lived experience with alcohol, with any of the AAs or 12 steps, but I do have lived experience in other things because I'm a peer support for mental health, and that is a very I guess wide range. So I do understand when we had talked about, I do understand that it will be beneficial if somebody was to have lived experience to facilitate the groups, because it is hard for someone who doesn't understand what you've been through to kind of relate, so that was one of the things that we did talk about, was whether or not someone who did have lived or not lived experience could facilitate the groups. That was one thing. I just thought it's like, I felt like it would be beneficial if somebody didn't, to be able to sit there and be able to understand and be able to go through the process. But then again, looking at it, hindsight 22, if you don't have lived experience, how would you be able to really understand what I went through? So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, Yeah, if I could just, yeah, we
Sure.
were talking about that, and I just suggesting for folks that were thinking about using this material, if you could, for those that, if the facilitators were going to be people without lived experience, that you could have someone, you know, kind of a peer with lived experience to kind of share that space. And you know, the first meeting that I went to for myself was in Atlanta. And I remember walking into that church basement and looking down the hall and hearing the group laugh, and their laughter hurt. And so I'm just trying to role model how intimidating and scary, and something that is supposed to be so joyful, after, you know, months of continued drinking and drug use, and basically my dad giving me a one-way plane ticket to go from Chicago to Atlanta, and telling me your mother's always had custody of you, when I was 25 years old. You know, and so that's the kind of granular experiential piece that I believe is beneficial for those of us that have lived experience.
Awesome. And how about group number 4? And if you could please mute yourself if you're not participating. A lot of people got unmuted somehow.
Well, by process of elimination, I guess we were group number 4. Just to kind of kick it off, a few of the things we discussed was, you know, the clinicians are needing this program to acclimate their patients to AA because they don't know enough about AA themselves to do it. And we thought it might be helpful if clinicians were getting this type of training too, so that they could be more familiar with the program, especially since its basis is in 164 pages in the book, which isn't too overwhelming. The process of connecting people to a sponsor is just, you know, amazing, because so many people leave AA because they weren't able to make that leap or make that connection. And, you know, as all the data shows and the anecdotal data shows, people who don't get a sponsor aren't successful in AA and don't stick around. There was a lot of discussion about family background and the role that that plays, and the influences and perceptions that come out of a community. But I'll defer to the other people in the group to talk about those.
Yes, before I speak on it, I want to see if we get an answer for this question that somebody in our group had. What's the difference between 12 steps and celebrate recovery? Can somebody help us with that question, if possible?
I think celebrate recovery is got to do with Christian religion helping.
It's a fundamentalist Christian. I believe that it's a super Christian group.
Yeah.
But it is 12-step based, is my understanding. But it is distinct from AA because AA is spiritual and not religious.
Yeah.
So that's my understanding of the difference. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from group 4? If not, we could take some general questions or general comments. We have a few minutes left.
Okay, well, I have a question. On one of the charts that was shown, it talked about, you know, well, people don't like that it says that AA is a disease, but then it kind of said to, well, pick and choose what you want from the program. You know, one of the things that I've heard in AA is that it's not always the best thing to treat the program like a smorgasbord. It is a program that is comprehensive and builds on itself, and, you know, picking and choosing can be a formula for failure. You know, what I would recommend to people who aren't comfortable with the use of the word disease is to view it purely as a semantic thing. The book is very clear in describing the causes and conditions of what it calls alcoholism, you know, which can be applied to addictions and other types of addictions, you know, things about, you know, not being able to stop after you started, you know, what they call the insanity of the first drink. You know, you think it's the things that you did while you were drinking that was the problem, but you took that first drink when you were sober and what led to that. And then it describes the things like the you know, the overwhelming ego and the self-centeredness and the self-centered fear and the things that underlie it. So it might be more helpful to tell people, you know, don't take the word disease at face value. Read those pages, look at the causes and conditions and see if you relate to them. And then don't worry about what they call it. Either it's applies to you or it doesn't.
Yeah, same with the word God. You know, in a lot of meetings, people change it. If they're given readings, they'll change it to higher power, they'll change it to spirit. I don't know, every meeting has its own rules around making those changes to the language. There are also people who substitute gender language into humans, or if it's a female meeting, female identifying meeting, they may change it to a she instead of a he. So there is a take what you like and leave the rest motto going on. I think that applies to almost everything except the steps, right? Because those are 12 and they're all in order and they build upon each other.
But remember, the only requirement for membership is not that you believe it's a disease, and it's not that you work the steps. We're trying to get people to not stop coming back. We don't want them to not come back. So the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. They can dance on the head of the pin regarding it being a disease all they want, as long as they're sitting in the rooms. Let's get them comfortable doing that.
Yeah. And that was one of my points. And you know, I started off in Alcoholics Anonymous and I had to get away from there because it was too restricted. I needed something that was going to be all inclusive, right? And it dealt with everything, the whole person, not just alcoholism. So when we're looking at that third tradition, right? Because I think people forget that there's 36 spiritual principles that we buy into. It's not only the steps, it's the traditions and the 12 concepts of service, right? So there's 36 spiritual principles that go alongside that. So it's not, the only requirement is the desire to stop, fill in the blank, not the desire to stop drinking. But, you know, violence is my drug of choice. Sugar is my drug of choice. Shoes are my drug of choice. I got way too many shoes, you know? So it's like fill in the blank versus just focusing on alcoholism itself. And I think that's where people feel as if they don't fit in or are not a part of, because after we learn to apply these things to our lives, it's like more is revealed. The longer we stay clean, the longer more gets revealed. And it has nothing to do with the substance. It has to do with, like William said, we make the decision to get loaded when we're in a sober frame of mind. So it's everything that happens before people pick up. And I think that's the missing piece. And we all do it in some shape, form, or fashion, whether it's how I'm feeling about me dictates how I treat you, the language I choose to use, how I'm advocating to get needs met. There's a lot of behaviors, thoughts and behaviors that come into play. And I think that's what peer support is. You know, we're sharing those things, right? And how we get through them together, not over them, but how we get through it.
Can I say something?
Oh.
I found after 31 years of sobriety that humor plays a really important part in sobriety. There's a quote from the big book that says, "We're not a glum lot. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to have a good time in the AA, as long as, like you said, your desire is to stop." Thank you.
Thank you. So
But
this, I'm
isn't
sorry.
it,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
really quick, isn't it said that recovery is till death, something of that nature? Like, even though you have you no longer fall victim to these things anymore, but you still have to continue on to, like, I guess the 12 steps, like they become a part of your life, right? Like, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but yeah.
Well, it's a progressive disease, I think, is what you're getting at, right? So you have to, the maintenance of the program and the maintenance of a spiritual condition dictate sort of the happiness of your existence day to day. Is that what you mean? And that we're still vulnerable to the addiction. Is that what you mean? We are out of time. We are over. We can
Yeah.
stay. You're all welcome. I just want to let you know that officially the session has ended, and thank you very much for coming. Let's give a Zoom applause. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. You're welcome to
Thank
stay
you.
here, and you're welcome to stay here and
Yeah.
chat. I'm going to stop the recording. But you're welcome to stay here and chat. We have an hour lunch break. The next session starts at 12:30. Jason Robinson from Share is going to be talking about the structure of self-help support groups and how to make them more effective. This is a required attendance for the PWI EPOC grantees. So we'll look forward to seeing all of you there. And in the meantime, please continue to chat. The room will be open. And thank you very much for your attendance.
Great. Yeah, for those